M1 Pro or Max versus M2 Pro or Max Apple Silicon. Same display and ports versus maybe slightly better versions of both. Probably the same price, but you can get the current model now, as in about a month for shipping, versus maybe 9 months for the next announcement. So if you want a 14 or 16-inch MacBook Pro, but you're wondering if you should get the M1 Pro or Max now, or wait and see what the M2 Pro or Max brings, well, I got you. Unlike the 13-inch M2 MacBook Pro Air, which is just begging for some new hotness at this point, the big kid full-on 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro Pros just got their redesign in October of 2021, so they'll be hanging on to this new look for a while still. Same for the new and bigger displays, which just went mini LED and up to 120 Hz as well. And I mean, there is a slight chance Apple could switch to OLED over the next couple or few years if they can get the consistency up for those larger panels at Apple scale, and that would legit eliminate some issues like blooming. But honestly, at this point, the biggest thing Apple could do for the current displays is just fix the shearing that occurs with things like bright text on dark backgrounds, because damn, the spatial audio speakers and studio quality mics and the blissful 1080p webcam are also newly new, much like the ports, which just got their MagSafe HDMI and SD card reader slots back, except thanks to the 2020s being basically the Book of Boba Fett of decades, the timelines got all screwy and they ended up shipping with HDMI 2.0 and SDXC UHS 2 instead of the newer, potentially more feature-rich and faster and increasingly better supported HDMI 2.1 and UHS 3, and updating that would be very much appreciated. In other words, if design, display, or ports are your biggest priority, then very, very little is going to change between this version and the next. So unless those specific things I mentioned are worth the wait for you, just go ahead and buy now. The bigger difference, of course, is going to be the chipset, where M1 Pro and Max have A14 generation CPUs, specifically 8 Firestorm performance cores and 2 Ice Storm efficiency cores. M2 Pro and M2 Max should have A15 generation CPUs, so 8 Avalanche performance cores and 2 Blizzard efficiency cores, or more. They're a little faster per core and can run a little hotter, but they're also more efficient, so battery life should stay about the same. And the M1 Pro and M2 Max CPUs could also sustain performance pretty much indefinitely in that 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro chassis. So depending on how exactly the thermals work out, it's possible M2 Pro and M2 Max might be able to do the exact same thing, but it'll mean faster app launches, web renders, some scripts, compilations, and old games, basically anything that was previously bottlenecked by a single core. The GPU, though, is going to be a bigger difference. M1 Pro at up to 16 G13 generation graphics cores, and M1 Max up to 32. M2 Pro might have up to 20 G14 generation cores, and M2 Max up to 40. So faster cores capable of drawing more power, and more of them for a double boost. So all your filters, effects, polygons, some plugins, modern games, everything just better and faster. Pretty much the same exact thing with the Apple Neural Engines, or A&E, which should keep the same 16 core count, but go from 4th to 5th generation, and better per core performance as well, especially for machine learning models that are A&E intensive, as well as things like AI photo and video enhanced tools. Top memory though, top unified memory spec went from 16 gigabytes on M1 to 24 gigabytes on M2. So if Apple chooses to propagate that up the line, we could be looking at a 48 gigabyte option for M2 Pro and a whopping 96 gigabyte option for M2 Max. Certainly with the price to match, but if you need to keep massive amounts of files, apps, and projects all open all at the same time, it could be super worth it to you. Wi-Fi 6E might also finally be along for the ride, but probably not 5G, not while Apple would still have to pay Qualcomm's obscenely exorbitant licensing fees. But there is always the potential for wildcards, like even though M1 Pro and Max were the same IP generation as A14, they introduced ProRes media engines like A15, as well as faster LPDDR5 memory. So who knows if Apple has any A16 generation tech that'll also find its way into M2 Pro and M2 Max, even if it's on the process node or instruction set architecture, the ISA side. That's always the benefit of waiting. You typically get more machine for the same price, more bang for the same buck, but you don't have the benefit of using the current version while you're waiting for the next, which is why my advice is just always wait as long as you can to buy. Then buy the best thing that you can afford. Hold on to it and enjoy it for as long as you possibly can with zero regrets, because there'll always be something new and something next. And if you wait forever, you'll never get anything done in the meantime, including what I've been doing, which isn't doom scrolling Twitter anymore, but smart scrolling Morning Brew, today's sponsor. It's become my safe, sane place, first thing in the day, each day, every day, for free, because it gives me everything I really need in just 5 minutes, because it's always just there, right when I wake up, ready to read, with impeccable curation, snappy, informative, always relevant, and often irreverent prose, 100% completely free, 7 days a week. And by clicking the link in the description, you can enjoy it in your inbox as well. Everything from a quick market recap to the top stories of the day, like how the FCC commissioner is asking Apple and Google to just remove TikTok from their platforms. Also, Air New Zealand putting bunk beds in the sky. I kid you not, you have to read this. It's Morning Brew, it's free, it takes all of 15 seconds to subscribe, and it starts your day off smart. So just hit that button on the screen or click the link in the description, and you'll not only get a free newsletter you'll actually read, but one you'll consistently enjoy. Clicking on that button really helps out the channel, and so does hitting up this playlist for even more hyper-detailed videos on M2 and just everything coming next. So hit up that playlist, and I'll see you in the next video.